Welcome to Le Podcast de Philippe. We're diving deep today, into this whole world of AI search engines. The Perplexity, the ChatGPT search, they're everywhere.
They really are making waves.
But are they accessible? That's what we're here to unpack, the good, the bad, the potential. And for more deep dives just like this, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, you name it.
It's a really crucial conversation, especially now with AI evolving so rapidly.
I know, right? It seems like accessibility gets left behind sometimes.
Definitely. One thing that really jumped out from the research we looked at is, some of these AI engines, they haven't quite caught up with accessibility standards.
You mean those basic requirements, like for people with disabilities to actually use the sites?
Exactly. Some of them, the interfaces just aren't playing nice with things like screen readers, which, are essential for people with visual impairments.
It's like building a doorway, but only half of it opens. You technically let people in, but...
Great analogy. And the report even gave specific examples, like with ChatGPT.
Oh, interesting. What kind of stuff?
Well, like keyboard navigation. Super important for people who can't use a mouse. But in ChatGPT, some commands, they just don't work consistently, and the layout is tough to move around in.
So even if you're a keyboard pro, it's still a struggle.
Yeah. And another thing, image descriptions. Crucial for screen readers, but they're often missing.
It's like alt text for pictures online. Most people don't even notice it, but...
But for someone using a screen reader, it makes all the difference.
Right. Without it, they have no clue what the image even is.
Exactly. And then there's the whole thing with status changes, like when something's loading or if there's an error.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. But yeah, if you can't see the screen.
You need those audio cues. The report found that stuff often isn't vocalized, so it gets confusing.
It'd be like trying to have a conversation, but every other word is missing.
That's a good way to put it. And these are just little things, but you see how much they impact the experience.
Totally. Accessibility isn't just some abstract idea. It's real people trying to use the web.
Absolutely. The good news is AI has huge potential to make things better.
Okay, so let's talk potential. How can AI actually improve accessibility in search?
Well, think about voice recognition. Imagine searching just by speaking. No keyboard, no mouse.
That would be huge for anyone with mobility issues, or if you just hate typing.
It's not just convenience, it's about giving people control.
And automatic image captioning, we were just talking about that. AI could analyze images, give accurate descriptions.
Exactly. People with visual impairments could see images, get the jokes and memes, everything.
Like a whole new level of understanding opens up.
And then there's natural language processing. It can simplify complicated information.
Like taking those dense research papers and making them actually understandable.
Exactly. It could help with cognitive disabilities or anyone who struggles with complex language.
Like a built-in tutor, breaking things down.
Love that analogy. And then personalizing search results, tailoring them to individual needs.
So like bigger fonts for someone with dyslexia.
Or maybe someone with ADHD, they get results organized visually, not just a long list of links.
It's not even just fixing accessibility, it's making the web better for everyone.
Totally, but it's not just about the tech, right? We got to make sure these AI solutions are designed right from the start.
Yeah, accessibility can't be an afterthought.
And that's where validation comes in. We need to really test these things, make sure they work for people with disabilities.
So not just a quick check at the end.
It's got to be part of every stage of development.
And then not just technical tests, right? We need feedback from actual users.
Absolutely. That's when things get really interesting. Because user testing, it not only finds bugs, it sparks new ideas.
So we're not just meeting minimum requirements, we're creating something truly empowering.
Exactly. And this user-centered approach is key.
Makes you realize accessibility isn't just technical, it's about understanding people.
For sure. And here's the thing, even those traditional search engines.
The ones we've been using forever.
Yeah, they've got their own accessibility issues. It's not just the new AI stuff.
So everyone needs to step up their game.
Exactly. People hit barriers on those platforms all the time. Accessibility is an ongoing journey.
Okay, let's dive into those challenges a bit. What kind of issues are we talking about?
Well, keyboard navigation is a big one. Some interfaces just aren't set up for it, so if you can't use a mouse...
Even basic stuff like typing a search or clicking a link becomes impossible.
Exactly. And then, again, the alt text for images, we see it everywhere, even on the old platforms.
It's like a missing piece. You're not getting the whole picture.
And then, when content changes on the page, it's not always announced to assistive tech. Big problem for screen readers.
It'd be like someone rearranging your furniture while you're trying to walk around in the dark.
Perfect analogy. And these are just a few examples. Accessibility is a constant process, always room for improvement.
It's a good reminder for all of us, even with tech that's been around for ages.
Absolutely. And we got to remember, it's not just about one specific disability.
Right. There's such a range of needs out there. Vision, hearing, mobility, cognitive differences.
The real challenge for search engines is to design inclusively for everyone.
It's a tall order, but it's what makes information truly accessible.
Couldn't agree more.
So we've covered a lot here. AI, the challenges, the potential, the issues with the old stuff. Accessibility is key in the digital world, and we've got work to do.
For sure.
But let's zoom out a bit. What are the big takeaways you want our listeners thinking about?
To me, the biggest one is accessibility isn't just technical, it's human.
It's about understanding people and building tech that lets everyone participate.
Exactly. And it's a journey, not a destination. We got to keep learning and working together.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that wraps up part 1 of our deep dives. Join us next time as we talk about developers, policymakers, users. How do we shape the future of accessible search?
Looking forward to it.
And for more discussions like this one, subscribe to Le Podcast de Philippe, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon. See you next time.
It really makes you think, how do we actually make change happen?
It's not enough to just talk about it, right?
Yeah.
We need action. Developers, policymakers, users. Everyone's got to be involved.
Absolutely. It's a shared responsibility.
Let's start with developers. They're the ones building these search engines.
Yeah, they have so much influence on how accessible these tools are. It all starts with how they think about accessibility.
It can't be something you tack on at the end.
Exactly. It's got to be baked in from the start. Like,
Yeah.
Following the WCAG guidelines, those are super important.
WCAG, could you explain that a bit for folks who might not know?
Oh, yeah, of course. WCAG, that's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Basically, they're like international standards for making websites work for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
Keyboard navigation, color contrast, alt text for images, all that stuff.
So it's like a roadmap for building inclusive websites.
Yeah. Exactly. And following WCAG, it's a must for any developer who wants to build a truly accessible search engine. But it's not just about checking boxes, It's about actively getting feedback from people with disabilities throughout the whole development process.
So developers shouldn't just assume they know what people need. They need to actually listen to users.
Right, and that's where AI can be so powerful, with all that personalization. We can create search experiences that adapt to each person's needs.
Like a truly customized experience based on your specific need.
Exactly. Imagine a search engine that changes based on who's using it. Like if someone has a visual impairment, they could have the search results read aloud to them. Or if someone has a motor impairment, they could use voice commands to navigate.
That's amazing. It feels like we're really moving towards a new era of accessible search.
I think so too. But developers can't do it all on their own, right? We need policymakers on board as well.
Yeah, policymakers can create the conditions for accessible tech to actually flourish. What can they do to help?
Well, for one, they can give companies incentives to actually prioritize accessibility, like tax breaks or grants for businesses that invest in making their stuff accessible.
So rewarding companies that are doing the right thing.
Exactly. And they can put laws in place that make accessibility mandatory, not just a suggestion.
So laws that say all websites and apps have to be accessible. No exceptions.
Exactly. Strong policies and regulations, they can level the playing field and make sure accessibility is seen as a basic right.
It sends a powerful message, right?
Yeah.
It says that accessibility matters, and we're serious about it.
Absolutely. But even with developers and policymakers doing their part, we can't forget about the users.
Right. Users need to speak up about what they need.
Exactly. User feedback is so important for making sure these technologies actually work for people.
So if you hit a barrier, don't just give up. Let the company know.
Right. Companies need to hear about the good and the bad experiences. It helps them make things better.
And we shouldn't underestimate the power of collective action, right? When people come together and demand change, things happen.
Absolutely. We've seen it time and time again. When people raise their voices, companies and governments have to listen.
So it's about creating a culture where accessibility is a priority for everyone.
Exactly. Because in the end, accessible tech benefits everyone. It makes for a more inclusive and equitable society.
Well said. Okay, so we've got developers, policymakers, and users all working together. But how do we make sure this momentum keeps going?
I think education and awareness are key. We need to help people understand why digital accessibility matters and the impact it has on people's lives.
So helping people understand that accessibility isn't just a niche issue. It's about creating a world where everyone has equal opportunities.
Exactly. And we need to move beyond just talking about the problem and start celebrating the solutions. Like highlighting companies that are doing accessibility right, showing off the cool things that inclusive design can do.
Making accessibility something to be proud of, not just a box to check.
Exactly. And remember, technology is always changing, right? What works today might not work tomorrow.
So we can't just assume that the solutions we have now will be enough in the future.
Right. We need to be looking ahead, thinking about the accessibility challenges that might come up with new technologies, like, for example, the metaverse.
The metaverse,
Yeah.
that whole virtual world thing. What kind of accessibility issues could come up there?
Well, think about it. A lot of metaverse experiences are very visual and auditory. So how do we make sure that people with visual or hearing impairments can participate?
Yeah, that's a great point. We might need to totally rethink accessibility for these new kinds of technologies.
Exactly. We got to keep learning, experimenting, pushing the boundaries, asking questions like, how can we use touch to create a more immersive experience for someone who's blind? Or how can AI generate audio descriptions of virtual environments?
Those are great questions. It shows how accessibility isn't just about adapting old tech, it's about shaping new tech.
Absolutely. And it requires a different way of thinking. We need to move from reacting to problems to building accessibility in from the very beginning.
So making it part of the design process from day one.
Exactly. And that means collaboration. We need developers, designers, accessibility experts, researchers, and especially people with disabilities, all working together to come up with truly inclusive solutions.
Creating a space where everyone's voice is heard.
Exactly. A space for open dialogue where we can share ideas, learn from each other, and keep getting better.
So it's not just about individual companies doing their own thing, it's about building a whole community around accessibility.
Right. And that community, it needs to be global and diverse. We need people from all over the world, from all backgrounds and abilities, to shape the future of accessible tech.
That's a powerful idea. It really emphasizes that accessibility isn't just a technical issue, it's a social issue. It's about creating a world where everyone has equal access.
Absolutely. And I think technology, especially AI, can be a huge force for good in that effort.
It's pretty amazing to think about the future of all this, you know?
Yeah.
Accessibility and tech, it feels like there's so much good that can be done.
Yeah, it's exciting. But as we wrap this up, I think it's important to remember this is just the start of the conversation.
We've talked about the issues, the possibilities, who needs to do what, but what's next? How do we make sure accessibility doesn't get forgotten as tech keeps moving forward?
Well, we got to stay ahead of the game, right? Like you said before, tech changes so fast.
So what works today might not be enough tomorrow.
Yeah.
Can't just assume we've got it all figured out.
Exactly. We got to be proactive, like
Yeah.
anticipate what's coming. Think about, I don't know, the metaverse, for example.
The metaverse, that whole immersive digital world everyone's talking about. What kind of accessibility problems could pop up there?
A lot of it's super visual, super auditory, right? So how do we make sure folks with vision or hearing impairments aren't left out?
That's a good point. It's almost like accessibility needs to be built in from scratch in those worlds.
Totally. We need to keep learning, keep experimenting, push the limits of inclusive design. Ask ourselves, how can we use touch to make things more real for someone who's blind? Or can AI describe virtual environments through sound?
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing stuff. Accessibility isn't just about fixing old tech. It's shaping the new stuff.
That's it. And that means a whole new way of thinking. We got to move beyond reacting to problems, build accessibility in right from the start.
Bake it into the DNA of new tech.
Exactly. And we got to do it together. Developers, designers, accessibility experts, researchers, and most importantly, people with disabilities. That's how we come up with solutions that actually work.
It's about making sure everyone has a seat at the table.
Yeah. A space where we can talk openly, share what we know, and keep learning from each other.
So not just companies working alone, but a whole community focused on accessibility.
Right. And a global one, too. Diverse, inclusive, people from everywhere, every background, every ability, shaping the future of accessible tech.
That's a powerful vision. It reminds us that accessibility is not just about the tech, it's about people. It's about creating a world where everyone has equal access to information, to opportunities, to experiences.
Absolutely. And technology, especially AI, it can be a huge part of making that happen.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
The future of accessibility, it's in our hands. All of us. Developers, policymakers, users, everyone, we have the power to use technology to create a more inclusive world, a better world for everyone.
Beautifully said. And if you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe to Le Podcast de Philippe. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon. Until next time.